Welcome to the Perceptions Today podcast, where we discuss consciousness in all forms. January 2022, episode 9, Paranormal Blip joins us for a Reincarnation Roundtable, part 2 of 4. Paranormal Blip is a podcast discussing all areas of the paranormal.
That was crazy. The some of the editing in that, but it didn't spoil it. It was quite entertaining, actually.
It was so weird, wasn't it? It's such a weird bit of the audiobook. I mean, almost
you're going
like
to have to explain to the class because you're keeping this.
Okay.
This is an instance of the conversation coming up in the roundtable discussion. Participants knew it was being recorded.
And listen, just quickly, Melissa, while I've got the opportunity to say, I love Sydney. I only spent a week in Sydney, but I absolutely love Sydney. So, say hello to Sydney for me. Sydney isn't a person, by the way. Sydney is a city.
She's got to go around each street.
It's a city in Australia. It's a city
just
in
wave at the tree. I'll never forget. There's this walk to the beach that I took one day, and the birds were singing in the trees. And that's probably like, you probably see that every day, but to somebody in Northern Europe, you never see, like, it's incredible. The birds were singing in the trees. Yeah, man.
You don't see, we get that all the time.
We do have parakeets down here.
Really loud.
I reckon Pete doesn't have any trees.
Pete, next time you're in Sydney, definitely let me know, and it'd be great. We could meet up. I could show you around.
Yeah, absolutely. I plan to bring my son to Australia.
I can't believe she's never given me that invite.
I'm a massive, I love Australia. I'm a massive, I love Australia so much. I know Melbourne really well. But I've only spent a week in Sydney. There's no question about it. We will be.
Think yourself lucky. She hasn't given me that invite.
More. Well, this is how I'm going to speak to everyone on the call here and get get my holiday sorted for my entire life.
Airbnb with Pete.
You've never mentioned that you were coming to Australia, so. But I'm going.
You never asked.
I've got to go, and I'm going to let Pete continue with his talk before he runs out of time, and before I run out of time to get to work.
Thanks for turning up.
Bye, everyone. That's okay. I wish I could stay longer, but unfortunately I can't. But good luck, Pete. It's doing really well so far. It's awesome.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, and take care. Have a lovely day.
Everyone. Bye, everyone.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
See you later. Take care. So also, by the way, just laughing over my thing. Also, by the way, anybody else that's out there, right? If you're a listener or whatever, just put your hand up. If you've got any questions, put your hand up, or request to speak or whatever. We might have to shuffle people around in order to get you to, be one of the speakers. But, please do it. While I'm going into this new bit, if you've got any responses or anything at all to say them, this is just a bit of a kind of reminder that that's possible. Now, in the book, which is my parents' book, The Children That Time Forgot, it's in a couple of parts, and part one is life before birth, which I think they still called it life before birth, like in terms of the part of the book. And then the part two was life after death. Now I'm going to talk about this case. It's case 28 in the book. This is absolutely extraordinary, and I don't know if this is going to register in terms of experiences that people may have had or things that they've heard about. But from my point of view, and I'm not a big, I know about NDAs and reincarnation and UAPs and some aspects of the paranormal, but I don't know much about ghosts, okay? I know a few good ghost stories, but I don't know much about ghosts. So maybe this is the kind of thing that happens all the time, but I've not ever heard of anything like this. This is case 28. Again, I mean, it's pretty morbid, this book. Again, a child.
Just a quick one. If it is going to be morbid, you might want to give a quick warning for any sensitive types. If it's going to be that morbid.
It's quite, I mean, it's more like a kind of Spielberg. It's quite Spielberg. It's a bit like the end of AI. No, spoiler alert, but it is a bit like the end of AI. Do you remember the end of AI?
We do. You just have to tell people to put their fingers in their ears now, and then we're telling them to take their fingers out their ears after you've gone past the point, if anyone's that sensitive. But I'd continue anyway.
Yeah. I'm sure, I'm sure it's fine. So anyway, have AI in your mind. Well, I'm telling you this. So a girl is born, a girl dies. She's about 8 years old when she dies. It is the end of the world for the mother. You know, it's like totally grief-stricken. Essentially, like her world has been, obviously, like, you know, I don't need to go into it. Like this grieving mother, like you can't get over it. And a couple of months after the girl dies, this 8-year-old girl dies, essentially the girl returns. Okay, she materializes in the mother's bedroom. The dad is in the bed asleep. The mother sees the girl kind of like in the corner of the room. The girl walks towards her. She goes
Just
to
a quick question on this one, just to set the scene, because obviously some of us do know about paranormal kind of things along these lines. Is it the same house that she was born into previously? Do you know, Pete?
Yeah, they didn't move. My folks don't mention that there's any moving.
Okay, because obviously there are theories, and again, we put down theories because we can't explain everything, that obviously strong emotional content can get leached into stonework and be replayed and woodwork because of the kind of nature of the structure. So somebody who is very similar to a record needle could go past that groove and trigger a response and see kind of imagery. And if it doesn't interact with sentience, then it could just be a memory embedded within whatever that metal or woodwork is like, because they've said that with different kind of ghosts which have moved up and down hallways but don't actually do anything. But you've also got the cases of some people hearing voices next to antique furniture, dressing tables where a woman's, say, done their hair, but they've had interaction between time where it could be a time slip. So there's different variations to be considered.
Okay, so hold your mustard there, Paul, because you know a lot about this, and you may be able to you know, expand on my folk story, but it gets a bit odder than that. But I like the idea of antique furniture talking to you. It's like something out of Beauty and the Beast or something, you know. Like anyway, right. So this girl. Thanks for the interruption, by the way. It's a good ghost story.
Did you want another one? I can do it now if you want.
Go ahead.
No, the joke was, do you want an interruption? So I interrupted you again. Continue.
Very good. Right. So just to go back slightly. So the girl is materialized at the bottom of like in the corner of the room. Okay. The mum gets out of bed, goes to the bottom of the bed, sits at the like edge of the bed, and says something like, "Come here." The girl goes towards her. They hug. The girl has materialized. She is back. She seems as real as any other human. Yep. She feels as real as any other human. Her mother picks up her arm, and the arm is the weight of her arm. Yep. She kind of like, you know, checks her from top to bottom, and she's back. She's there. She's, you know, whole, as it were. She's solid. Yeah. And she speaks, and she says, I'm very tired, Mummy. And the mum says, well, let's snuggle up in bed. And now, just before this happened, the mum noticed that the time was something like, I think it was 10:30. It was certainly on the half hour. I think it was 10:30. And so the girl gets into bed next to her mum, and they snuggle in bed. And after 10 minutes, the girl says, I'm feeling very tired. I've got to go now. And she looks at the corner of the room where she kind of first appeared, or materialized, I should say. And the mum got this very strong sensation. Although she couldn't see anything in the corner of the room, she got a very strong sensation that somebody was in the corner, that her daughter could see. Somebody was guiding her. This is the word used in the book. A guide was in the corner of the room guiding the daughter. Yep. And then the daughter disappeared.
It's
literally.
a boy, actually. Sorry to interrupt, but I think it's a yeah.
Are you sure? Have you? Maybe you're right. But I've got a very clear memory of a girl. Maybe you're thinking of another one.
Just a quick one, Avogadus. Did you put your hand up? Because
Well,
the icons are playing up strangely
No,
around you at the
sorry to
moment.
interrupt.
To himself.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
He did a voice throw. But anyway, I love the way you're totally on board with it being a boy. Can you expand, please, Avogadus?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the movie several times, and like, it's definitely a little boy that did this kind of central character.
Hang on, I think you're getting confused. I think Paranormal Blip is talking about a case, and you're talking about AI, the film. Avogadus.
Oh, sorry, I got it mixed up. My bad.
No, that's okay.
Good job
as
I
long as
didn't
we're
say
clear.
it's like Transformers. It's actually a robot. You don't know
Was it in disguise, though?
Robot. Yeah, it's a
Was it in
robot for sport.
disguise?
That's okay.
Right, okay.
I can see the confusion. Anyway, back again. God almighty, Stephen King doesn't get this, does he? Where are we? Right. So the girl after 10 minutes disappears. She doesn't go to the corner of the room.
Well, hang on. You were talking about the corner of the room and somebody being there. That was the last point before Avogadus started.
Okay, it's a boy. It's a boy. Yes. So this very strong sense that the mother got, although she couldn't see anyone in the room, she says that like she had this sense that there was a guide in the room, that her daughter had a guide, somebody that was guiding her. And the girl looked at the corner of the room, and then she said something like, "I have to go now," and then she disappears. Like she literally just kind of, goes. She leaves. So what was a whole, for all intents and purposes, alive child disappeared into thin air. She didn't go to the corner of the room. She was still in the bed. She disappeared into thin air. So I don't know much about ghost theory, but that is a case in the book. Of course, in terms of evidence, all we're going with is she couldn't wake up the husband. She tried to wake up the husband by calling his name. She didn't want to make too much noise because she was scared of scaring her daughter off. So she didn't yell, Jeff, you won't believe it, Jeff. She didn't do that. But the husband didn't wake up. And I've heard in other contexts, in other ghost story contexts, if an experience is happening in other paranormal contexts as well, if an experience is happening to you, it may well be that it's happening to you and it's got nothing to do with anyone else, if you know what I mean. So the person wouldn't wake up because it's not to do with them. And anyway, maybe that doesn't apply to this case, but certainly the husband.
No, that also works with time as well. There's lots of cases where people have seen time change and the other person has been immobile or doesn't respond to anything. In other cases, for example, we know of one person where she was looking out of her, let's say, out on her terrace into the garden. There was trees there, birds were coming down, doves eating, probably about 20 of them. And suddenly for her, as she's looking out, the doves actually stop, and some are in mid-flight, some are moving in obviously different directions. She calls her husband, but her husband actually gets to come into the room, and he actually sees the same event, that time is literally frozen for 5 to 20 seconds outside, and then starts to go back into normal mode. So it's strange how we have no real understanding how time works, and when we're moving and spinning on our planet, what we go through, what changes our perception, speeds us up, slows us down.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. So, if there is anyone out there that wants to kind of shed light on or just have any kind of response to that story, then, either put your hand up now or just, kind of, if not, then I'll continue. Doesn't seem as if anyone's putting their hand up. So, so that is The Children That Time Forgot. It's an incredible book, and, one that certainly, coming back to it, as a kind of 46-year-old bloke or whatever, if you can call me a bloke, there's lots of very interesting lots and lots of very interesting cases that resonate with the kind of wider world of reincarnation. So if we're going to talk about reincarnation, we need to talk about Ian
Before
Stevens.
you move off onto this, I would actually mention where your brother got the audio book onto, what formats, and also which other platforms are actually selling the book, or whether they can go and read reviews, or if there's anything on YouTube for the people in the room to actually go and investigate further to see how they feel about it. Because then you could hold coming back to your site, I'd say a Twitter space for when people have actually read this and compared it to other people's research on reincarnation.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think I'm right in saying that Gerald bought the book. I think it's Gerald bought the book. Maybe you can jump in here, Gerald, and confirm.
Yeah, hi Peter. Yeah, I bought the book actually, and I didn't have time to finish it before.
Yeah, no worries. But I mean,
So
maybe
I-
you're. Yeah, where did you
so I
get
have-
it from?
Yeah, I got it from Audible.
Oh, okay. You got the audiobook.
Yeah. So I bought the paper book, but I was running out of time to read it, and I was going to be doing a bit of driving over the next few days. So I thought, okay, I'll buy the audio book so I could finish it off. So I've got both. So yeah, and enjoyed them
Yeah.
both very much actually. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, if I say to you, Gerald, the chapter 5 burp, do you know what I mean by that?
I know it was that was worth the price alone, actually. Yeah, that was crazy. The some of the editing in that, but it didn't spoil it. It was quite entertaining, actually.
It was so
But,
weird, wasn't it? It's
yeah,
such a
yeah.
weird bit of the audiobook. I mean,
You're
almost
going
like
to
when
have
I
to explain to the class,
no,
because you're
no,
keeping this.
okay.
So there was a bit so that the woman who's narrating the book is very good, but for some reason there's a part in it where she decides to belch, and then she does a little bit of singing and a little bit of just humming and coughing and repeating. So I mean, it only lasts for a few moments, but yeah, I think clearly there's a little bit of lapse in the editing in that bit, but no, it didn't detract from it at all, actually. But no, I
Yeah,
enjoyed it very much. And I do have a question, actually, I was going to ask, and I was probably going to save it for later, but now I've grabbed the mic, as it were. I wonder if I could ask it now. I was interested in how your parents actually did the research for it. Oh, did you hear me? Have I gone?
I heard
sorry,
you.
no,
It's
no,
okay.
no, no.
Your audio was good. He might have been coughing at that point.
So I was replying to Phil that sent me some information about the book, who isn't going to be speaking because he's doing other things. So, but thank you, Phil. I got your message there. So, and I'll give you your message in a moment. But first of all, I'll have to say, how did they do the research? Well, interestingly enough, I mean, it's a shame that Phil isn't going to talk because, well, although he is younger than me, I'm not sure whether he will remember. It came out I was 8. All I've got to go on in terms of how they did the research is what is in the book and what I can remember in terms of their like writing process. So they were my mum was a very driven woman, and she would write for hours and hours into the night, and there was this kind of like long kind of editing process with my kind of parents collaborating on the editing. But in terms of the actual kind of nuts and bolts, I mean, I know that in this interview that I posted on Twitter, she talks about going to, like the county hall or whatever to look up some records. And of course, that's filled like that information, that kind of description of the research is in the book a lot, unbeknownst to the parents, we did this or whatever. Further research suggests, looking at the records from here, whatever. I don't know if you remember the Tay Bridge story, which isn't the story I'm kind of going into detail here, but the Tay Bridge story contains lots and lots of historical information, including the names of the guy that flags the train off from Edinburgh, wherever it is. I think it must be Edinburgh. Yeah. So there was clear. You can see from the book that lots of research was done. Having said that, there are some cases that is essentially kind of first-person testimony or whatever, like the testimony of the parents, and then it goes to the next case. So there is a kind of like a without them being around, they're both dead now, so I can't ask them, it's quite difficult to work out the level of research. All I can do is think about them as people, and my mother especially, the kind of tenacious type of person that she is. And you can see, in some of the stories like the Tay Bridge one, the Mandy one, a couple of the other ones, where you think, like clearly some research, the Nicola one as well, the first one, there was a kind of level of research in terms of, obviously in the early 80s in Britain or everywhere, research involved actually physically going to a building and looking through documents. Yeah, that was research, of course, So, they had a big family, they had full-time jobs, they didn't have a lot of money. There certainly wasn't like a big like advance from a publisher. They didn't have a lot of money to throw at this in terms of traveling around the country or whatever, but they were kind of dedicated, kind of like people coming from a journalistic background. So yeah, it's a really interesting question, Gerald. I don't quite know the answer to it, but yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Thank you. That's interesting. Thank you.
Renegade has thrown another question before we get to Jackson, is that where in the book are there children who have actually got future connections instead of coming from the past, actually being able to remember the future in your parents' book?
No, nobody remembering the future. No, there isn't that. I mean, there is that, like the closest it comes to is that thing I mentioned about the child thinking, I'm here with my group of soulmates on the earth. We were born more or less the same time. I haven't met any of them yet, but I'm sure that I will. So that sense that child had, that the kind of, a path, if you like, to some extent of his life was kind of laid out, but there isn't anybody remembering the future or whatever.
Right, so that's answered Renegades. Jackson, if you'd like to come forth.
Hi, thanks, guys. I was just curious. Earlier, you mentioned not that they're connected, but synchronicity and birthmarks. I heard both those when I first hopped on, and I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about either one of those or both, either in the book or just outside experiences.
Yeah, totally. So there is a case in my parents' book, which is about this child who was born with a essentially like a kind of what looked like a wound from a cut on his leg, and when he was like 4 or something, his grandmother asked him about it, and at that point he said, "Well, that's when I was cut. I was stabbed." And so, but that's only kind of like his testimony, if you like. The interesting cases in terms of physical birthmarks are from, this is a beautiful segue, I feel like Jeremy Vine, the work of Ian Stevenson. Now, Ian Stevenson is the kind of the don of reincarnation research. He started like in the years ago in the kind of 50s, like late 50s into the 60s, and 67 he set up a department in the University of Virginia, and he was funded to travel to India like loads of times. The guy that made
just a quick one for you. In above share group is the wiki page for actually him.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. So he was funded to travel to India by the guy that invented the Xerox machine, who I think his name is Carlton, something like that. Carlton, maybe? Can't remember. I didn't write it down. But anyway, Stevenson. Oh, Carlson. Thank you, Paul. So
Professor of psychiatry. Or, yeah, psychiatry.
So Stevenson, there's he published a book about like he came across hundreds and hundreds of cases of reincarnation. Okay, and the most compelling cases for me are the many cases, like a whole book's worth, or maybe even like more than one volume of books, where he talks about physical birthmarks, where so the typical story would be that somebody is born with an incredibly odd, strange birthmark, who starts to talk about a past life in so much detail that they can then tie it to somebody that was alive, previously, and did die. And I'll come to the DOPS research in a minute, the data, but the data shows, I think it's 70% of people with past life memories have some kind of unusual, like a non-natural death, and a lot of them are quite violent. Yeah, so it might be that there's some kind of link between the trauma. This is certainly what Jim Tucker says. The link between the trauma of dying and the kind of aliveness of the memory in the next life, if you see what I mean. Yeah, because it was such a kind of mad death or whatever, mad death. So yeah, so these physical birthmarks is linked, connected to somebody that the child is saying, I was this person lived like this, and they died like this, and they find evidence that, oh yeah, it's true. Like, they're not just making it up. There was a person who lived like this with this name in this place, and they did die exactly how the child is saying. And the child does have the birthmarks that you think, oh, there might be something in it. Now, one of the cases, which is like an incredible case, that was one of Stevenson's cases, is about this Turkish gangster. Now, this guy was on the run for a couple of years, and he got into a bit of a what would you call it? A confrontation with the cops, the Turkish cops, and they found his compound where he was hiding out. Yeah, I don't know if they used remote viewing, but like Saddam Hussein, but finding Saddam Hussein, which is one of my episodes, by the way. But anyhow, they found out where this guy was hanging out, this Turkish gangster, and they kind of went there in numbers, and they had like an old-fashioned shootout, just like in the movies. And then they burnt down the building that he was in. And he thought, well, instead of being captured and probably tortured, I'm going to take my own life. So he put this gun under his chin, shot the gun through his chin, up through the brain, and that's it. Game over for the Turkish gangster. And then a couple of years later, this child is born, grows up, starts talking about this name like nobody knows who he's talking about. He's saying, I used to be the Turkish gangster. Yeah. I mean, he's, obviously uses the guy's name. He doesn't say, I used to be the Turkish gangster. And it all marries up. And this guy, like the baby, has got this very weird birthmark under his chin and at the top of his head. And you think, what is going on here? Certainly Stevenson kind of used this as an example of one of these cases of physical birthmarks linked up to, kind of whatever, like past life testimony. And so enough of information is given by the person, by the child that's kind of telling these stories, where you can link it. You can say, well, okay, is there a guy called this in this village, and did they die in this way? So that's amazing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's even stranger cases where he got the money to go to India and other places that were remote, and finding actual locations with that. I put in a podcast for Jim, I'm going to forget his name now. Yeah, Jim B. Tucker, who came from the same university afterwards, talking obviously about Stevenson.
Yeah.
And he went to, obviously, prior to the internet, prior to anything else, and he was finding these connections with the marks of death and also other birthmarks. And because they're so varied, it was fascinating. And again, you've got other people that were doing the same kind of research, and it just goes on and on. And it just really is. I think there's other people in here, like R.N. Vooght has read similar kind of reports. And I'm sure even Azure might have heard things. Mike, Fiorito. Don't know if they got anything to add to the game. If they want to put their hand up and add to this. There's always a nice good delay with how people pick up on these things and how sound goes across the world. Nobody's going to pick up my invitation.
That's no good. Takers. That's okay. I'll continue. Absolutely fine. Yep. So that's Stevenson. And if this is something that you're interested in and you kind of want to know more about it, then obviously you can go to the Wikipedia link for Stevenson, or just type in Ian Stevenson, Stevenson, into YouTube or Spotify or whatever. Like, there's a massive amount of information.
Even above in the shared section up there, and also we've put into the pinned tweet, if you follow through the thread, there are 2 different interviews. One as a skeptic point of view, researching obviously Stevenson's work and looking at it from just the factual part and whether it could be other people influencing children or other events. And also you've got it from the other side, from Jim B. Tucker, where the evidence is very strong. He went into it and he was a child psychiatrist, and he goes the other way, and he comes up with so many cases that he even has one child that comes into his practice, and the parents don't actually tell him that he was one of the children that was actually looked at by Stevenson in the first place, but he was coming for another condition. So it gets even more stranger when you get the synchronicities of these things happening. Back to yourself, Peake.
Thank you, Perceptions. Yeah, absolutely. And I am now going to turn to some of the data from the Division of Perceptual Studies. So this was the department in the University of Virginia that was set up by Ian Stevenson in 1967. And this guy that is like one of the kind of lead researchers or lead academics there at the moment, his name is Jim B. Tucker. And he has really kind of taken Stevenson's work forward and continuing it. He's been doing it for like years and years and years himself. And so they have got a database of 1,500 cases that they call solved. Okay. So of all of they've got, like, if you go on their website, which we've linked, I kind of sent out the link a couple of days ago on my Twitter thread.
Can I just pause you there 1 second? There is a man who is just literally trying to get his audio sorted out. Vooght would like to get himself in on this conversation. He's really getting into this conversation, and he's going to get that connection. Come on.
He's coming up as a listener with me. I'm not sure if he's a speaker with you, Paul, but
right.
I've got him as a listener.
I've now sent him the invite.
Okay, cool.
Now teach me a lesson not to actually look at the icon. Come on. You can do it. I've sent the invite. Vooght, just pick up. Is it being slow? Come on. Here we go. Here we go. Maybe. Oh, why hasn't he picked up? Vooght, one more time. Here we go. Otherwise, I'm getting Estevel in. Here, take up some airspace for you. Estevel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, hello. Hi, good evening. I listened to both podcasts you'd linked to. One was, I don't know how long they were, because I listened at double speed, because otherwise it would be too long. And one had a bit of a clip from Sam Harris being in a debate with, what's the astronomer called again? It doesn't matter what his name is. Anyway, and then he was sort of challenging him because he is very much into meditation, and that he was sort of challenging him as in, well, you've got a propensity, sort of a bias towards Buddhism, and now I see here that you have a picture of the Dalai Lama, and because they also believe in reincarnation, although the purpose eventually is no longer to be reincarnated, to be enlightened, and well, there's this link with what is it called, with quantum mechanics. Do you have any can you elaborate a little bit more about such things?
Just a quick one, Estevel. We have to tell people that the Dalai Lama is pictured in the DOPS shared document above, whereas they were walking together, and that's where you're picking that up, aren't you, Estevel? Yeah. And now, that's off to yourself, Parent.
Ian, who is that? That's Ian.
Ian Stevenson, yeah. And it's part of the DOPS organization.
I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what the question is, Esteval.
Oh yeah, I'm always all over the place. Anyway, the point is, I mean, reincarnation. All these. I don't. You probably listen to these two podcasts as well. There is this. How long does it take for someone, according, if it's true, let's assume that it's true, that because they always talk about someone dies and then within a very short amount of time that person, from all these cases, from all these anecdotes, they are reincarnated somewhere close by, in terms of physical distance to where the previous person lived or died, or
It was close to 3 years, give or take.
and often in the same family. That must really suck if you've got a lousy family. Then you're born into the same drama.
Yeah,
Reborn into the same.
I got the data here, first of all. Shall I just go through the data here? I'll answer all your questions. I mean, out of all of the content, I wouldn't worry too much about Sam Harris. There's more interesting areas to explore than Sam Harris. But okay, here's the data from the Division of Perceptual Studies, University of Virginia, who've been looking at this for 50 years. So the website, by the way, includes links to academic papers, and they're all kind of like freely available papers. So if you want to kind of like dive into this world, the DOPS, the Division of Perceptual Studies website, is a good place. Okay, and I tweeted that out a couple of days ago. I think it might be above, or if not, there is some information about them above.
It is above.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
So below, as RN Vooght would say.
Beautiful, yeah. So the average gap between death and the next life is 4.5 years, and the median is 15 months. So the median, yeah? Do I need to explain that? I'm not sure if I can remember what median is. Can you remember what median is?
You should be able to do it. It's the number where divided by another one, not the average, but when you put all the numbers together, you look at the ratio that are repeating. That's how you kind of pick up the median.
Oh, yeah, thank you, yeah.
From basic maths.
Yep, cool. So 70% of people died from unnatural means, so drowned, train crash, hit by a train, stabbed to death, something like that. And like I said earlier, it may be something to do, and this is what Tucker says, it may be something to do with the trauma of the death that means that death is memorable.
Just a quick one to pause you so that we all get everything correct, as we like to be on here. So if you want to find a median value and you happen to have 10 and 26, when you look at it, you will find that you happen to have, right, if you had 10, 11, 13, 15, 16, 23, 26, 15 would be the middle number. So that would be your median number. So that's how you try and do it. So you put them in order, and then you find the one that's in the middle. So if you had 3, 5, and 12, 5 would be...
and you find the middle. Thank you very much. Brilliant. So the median is 15 months, and the average is 4.5 years. What is 15 months? That's like not even a year and a half, is it? No. So very, that's a short amount of time, yeah? 1 year and 3 months. That's the median.
So how does that work? I mean, so someone's... what do you call this? Spirit? It goes
spirit, if you like.
Yeah, well, I don't. What is there another word you use?
Soul.
So yeah, soul. Yeah. So two people are, having sex, and then at the point of, when the sperm and the egg cell merge, that's like the point of entry for the soul to like, yep, I have to get in there now.
Oh, well, the Tibetans think it's about 39 days, give or take.
Yeah.
Because it's when the pineal gland is about 39 days, isn't it, I think?
Yeah.
And according to Journey of Souls, the book by, I can't remember who wrote that now, but Journey of Souls talks about how that in utero period, the souls kind of like do loads of things. They jump in, jump out, go to other places, apparently, according to Journey of Souls. So I don't have a definite answer for you, Esteval, but it's all, kind of difficult to pinpoint, really. But at some point, after conception, and I suppose before birth, the soul inhabits the body. Yeah, if you can call it, well, you can call it a body, can't you?
Yeah.
The being, human being. All right, so just a couple more stats for you. Young children, usually their memories fade at around 6 or 7. That's actually later than I've heard. I've heard 5, and in my parents' book it's 5. But I am going with these guys because these are the guys, like, from my point of view, the
Just sorry for butting in. More information coming in from our team confirming the 49 days of basically when the embryo gets its soul. And again, that's all the pineal gland. So Renegade is supplying information there.
So that's a month and a half. Yeah. Okay. So those souls on average, or not on average, but the median length, they're just wandering around for like 6.5. No, what is it? 7? Yeah, about 7 months or something.
And also, just another one for you, Paranormal Blip. From the crowd, RN Voot's having issues with his good old system again, but he's thoroughly enjoying the narrative, which is great, and also the information.
Brilliant. Good to hear.
You can continue.
Good to hear.
Now.
Thank you, RN
I think everybody
Voot.
else is enjoying this.
He's going to do this awkward
People,
thing.
show me whether you're enjoying this or whether you're not. If you're not enjoying this...
So awkward. Come on, social distancer.
Yeah.
Social distance has fallen asleep.
Just checking. Just seeing that we haven't put everyone to sleep. I don't think we have. There's been so much good content here. I will let you continue.
I think social distance is at the piano again. Right, okay. So, yeah. So what I was saying was that in my parents' book, they say about 5. And the idea that my mum said, I've heard this before, like a mother, Stevenson says the same thing, is that basically when you get to school, there's so many other things to remember, essentially. And so, you start to kind of forget about it. But interestingly, Tucker, with his research from DOPS, says it's a bit later. The memories fade at around 6 or 7. But they have re-interviewed some people, DOPS. So, people that are now adults, they've re-interviewed them about what can you remember. And some memories...
Sorry, going to have to butt into this, Pete, because this is just worthwhile putting in. RN Vooght has also said, when you were talking the story of recalling the child in the room, he's actually felt something similar when he was a kid.
Okay, I know you can't speak RN Vooght, but can you...
Maybe if we can get him to see if it works again now. He always has trouble with this. I'll send him the invite and see if it works now.
Sorry to talk over you, Paul. If you could maybe expand that in a paragraph or whatever, RN, but that sounds really interesting. Just go into that a little bit, please. 33's requested there. What's RN doing? Is he around? He's just listening still, yeah? All right, shall I just continue then? Yeah, let's continue. Perceptions is on mute. So...
Continue until he picks up.
Yeah,
sorry.
great, cool.
Hey. Hi, guys.
Oh, hi.
I just wanted to say I had memories from the time I was about 2.5 years old. And I don't know, can't tell you why, but I do.
Okay, tell us more, please.
Well, no, I think we talked about this. I don't want to disrupt. I just think this is amazing, and blessings to everybody. Just wanted to share that.
All right, blessings to everybody. Thank you, and lovely to see you again, 33, and to hear your voice. But please, if you want to expand, then go ahead, just put your hand up or whatever. But if not, then I'll just continue. So this idea that they go back to the children when they're adults, and certain memories do, like they're still there after years, after decades. So seems obvious, but the word heaven is used where the children live in a place that uses that word. So there's a kind of contextual, kind of association. I mean, just like anything, you're going to use the words to communicate anything that makes sense to the people you're speaking to, so I don't think there's anything more than that really about that. About 10% of past life testimonies have the genders change from one life to the other, and almost all of them more intelligent than the average child. So if the average is 100, it was quite a small sample. I think it was only 15.
Are you talking IQ points?
He doesn't use the word IQ, and I don't think
because when you're using
based
that,
on 100, is that 100 the average?
It's normally kind of about 120, I think. I'll have a look. I'll quickly type something in. Continue talking, and I'll find out and come back again.
Okay, so just a heads up, in a couple of minutes, Perceptions is going to interrupt me with a long explanation of IQ. So that's something to look forward to. But he doesn't use IQs. But anyway, we can find out what IQ means in a minute.
Intelligent quotient, by the way, and I will interrupt quite well. So, everybody, get out your notebook, notepads and pens. When it comes down to it, the IQ tests are made to have an average score of 100. Psychologists revise the test every few years in order to maintain 100 as the average. Most people, about 68%, have an IQ between 85 and 115. Only a small fraction of people have a very low IQ, below 70, or a very high IQ, above 130. That's not a very long explanation, and now I'm going to go quiet.
Very much. Okay, so obviously he is talking about IQ, so that's good. Thank you for, what's the word? Clarifying Perceptions. Thank you.
It's called a footnote.
Yeah, it's like a verbal footnote, like a kind of mouth note. So, yeah. So anyway, they're all above average. But I mean, don't read too much into this, because I think the sample number was something like 15 people. So who knows? But it's worth kind of mentioning, as we pass by it. It's worth looking at it as we pass by that. All of them were above 100, apart from one who was 99. So 14 out of the 15. I think it might be 15. You can look in the, search it out for yourself if you actually want the actual, what he said, and not just like a badly remembered version. But, virtually all of them have got a higher IQ than the average. So that's interesting, isn't it? Now, one thing to leave you with is something that I think is really interesting. And my parents, in their kind of in my mother's beautiful prose, she kind of like says the same thing. I mean, she talks about how, like, if they can alleviate the fear of death in people, then their work here is done, or something like that, at the end of the book. But I want to leave you, before we get into, kind of further this discussion, I want to leave you with something that Stevenson said in his last paper that he wrote a couple of years before he died. So this was a kind of academic paper looking back on his 50 years of research in this area. And in that last paper, he says, I don't know. I'm still a seeker. So that question of, even of looking into it for years and years. I mean, if you ask me, do you think it happens? I think, yeah, absolutely it happens. If you ask me, do I think NDEs happen? I think the evidence is overwhelming that NDEs and reincarnation is a phenomena that happens. Absolutely. There are reincarnation researchers that will say that it happens to everyone. There's no real reason to think that it wouldn't happen to everyone if it happens to some people. But Stevenson, who knew more about it than me, than I ever will, said, I don't know. I'm still a seeker. There's something really beautiful about that. So there we go. That is. Oh, by the way, before I say, hand over to Perceptions again, my brother sent me some information. If you are interested in the book, it's called, so this is my parents' book, Peter and Mary Harrison. The book is called The Children That Time Forgot. And he just said that, let me just get here we go. So paperback, Kindle, and audio, all available on Amazon. So there we go. So it seems like Amazon is the place to go. Certainly that's how I got onto the audio book, which is through Audible, which is an Amazon company. And that costs I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but it's like £1 or something. I think Gerald might be able to confirm that, but it's very it doesn't cost a lot. And you've got that amazing chapter 5, which is only a couple of minutes, but it's totally unedited, weirdly, well, I think probably is totally unedited. So the woman is burping and singing, and It's just like 4 minutes of chaos, like unedited chaos, essentially, which is nice, isn't it? And when I heard that, I remembered this rug making in the Islamic tradition, when people in the countries who follow Islam make rugs, they purposefully make a mistake with the idea that perfection is only something that God can do. So as humans need to make a mistake. And I quite like the idea that it isn't kind of editing faux pas, but it is a kind of purposeful burp, and a purposeful sing-along, and a purposeful saying the words over and over again. So there's kind of 4 minutes of purposeful chaos to kind of like remind us all that we're not perfect. I'm pausing there for something to speak.
Oh yeah, I was going to get in there on this one. So I think a lot of us in this room will say that there are multi-sections to how things happen. It's not just one answer for everything. Again, we've always used the phrase that you can always get to through multiple ways in mathematics. R.N. Vooght is also saying that if you look at the 49 days of the pineal gland appearing, it also correlates alongside the Bible, where it narrates that the Holy Spirit descending upon the apostles, which takes place 49 days after Easter on Whitsun. So those kind of pieces of information kind of permeate a lot of texts which are taken to heart.
Yeah. So listen, let's open it up. I can see one person's hand up. I can see 33's hand up. So let's throw it to 33 in a minute. But let's open it up to the floor. Okay, so there's my presentation, basically. There's some information about reincarnation. We've looked at Dobbs. We've looked at Stevenson. We've looked at the children that time forgot. So if there's any way that, like, it's over to you guys, okay? So you can shape and control the narrative, as R.M. Vooght calls it, which is quite a nice
what
one.
I do is I just host the floor and make sure that we don't have audio issues, etc. So if 33 wants to put forward their question.
Oh, goody, I get to go first. Reincarnation, my favorite subject. I fully believe in reincarnation. The question is, because I have my father who once told me, myself, I am a reincarnation of him getting it right. But yet, he's no longer here, but I have my son. And so how does that make us? So when we incarnate, are we incarnating with copies of avatars of ourselves, of our personality? It's very complicated. It's a very interesting thing. So I was wondering what your take is as far as, what we pass off to our children, because DNA is very powerful. And so I wanted to start with that, and probably the most difficult question, I'm sure.
Yeah, the standard kind of textbook narrative, to use that word again, of reincarnation, and anybody put their hand up and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm kind of reading the research is that somebody will be born, that person dies, their soul goes to a place that is like on a different realm from the kind of world that we are experiencing. And then, kind of 4.5 years later or 15 months later or whatever, they get reborn. So I don't know if you're around 33 for one of the cases in my parents' book is a child that says that when I was born, I was given notice, I was given kind of warning, if you like, that I was going to be born. And then when I was born, I jumped into the river. And he said, some people are jumped in the river and some people are pushed. So that's, I don't know if you've seen the film Soul, the Disney film Soul, but that's very similar, so there's like a whole group of people in this kind of ethereal place, this world, if you like, or whatever, this kind of realm. And then they jump into a hole in Soul. In my parents' book, the case, the boy jumps into a river and then he is born. Okay, so that's the classic thing. So it's not copies. Your dad saying you're a recreation or a reincarnation of me is a nice thing to say, and I can see where he's coming from as a father and as a son. But that's not the kind of, I mean, obviously he was still alive when he said that. Do you know what I mean? So you're not a reincarnation of him. It could be though that if there is no link in terms of when your father died and when your son was born, there is a chance that your father, your son, is the reincarnation of your father, and that's certainly something that I'm aware of with my own son. That my own son was born a couple of years, well, less than a year. Well, let me work this out. 15 months after my father died. Now, I don't think that my son is the reincarnation of my father, but in terms of the kind of chronology of it, that would fit, So I don't know if that helps, but that certainly is my kind of reading of the kind of standard, reincarnation format.
Thank you so much. I'm agreeing with you 100%. That's my undertaking. I just wanted to understand if you because it's kind of weird that the DNA slide off on the family. It's almost like we're all interacting and taking turns in like a weird musical chairs. And I can't wait to grab a copy of your book and read about your parents. Thank you so much. I'll give the other
Thank
chance.
Thank you, 33, and jump in later on or whenever you want. But also, I mean, this thing about being born into the same family, that does happen, but that isn't the norm. That isn't the norm, as far as I know. As far as the data, my reading of the data is, and I'm not like, kind of like reincarnation researcher, do you know what I mean? So there's probably many people in this call that know about the data more than me and the research more than me. But my reading of it is that although it does happen, and people say, I was your aunt or whatever, it usually is, there is a kind of physical, kind of geographic link often, but like in the, you're kind of not born billions of miles away from where you used to live, but it isn't normally that it's families. Yeah. Soul groups are something different. Soul groups is a group of 5 or 6 people who live in the otherworldly realm, call it heaven or whatever you want, and you then have this connection, this kind of like living life after life after life after life after life. Maybe who knows? I mean, nobody actually knows how many. I mean, nobody knows anything, as Stevenson reminds us. But certainly the idea there is that you will connect with the same souls, manifested, kind of carnated into different people, different genders, different relationships with you, or whatever. But it's the same 5 or 6, souls that you yourself have got a kind of continual relationship through the lives. And it may well be that there's like, something happened in one life that you need to kind of work out with this person or this soul or whatever, incarnated as a new person in your current life, So there's kind of like a soap opera, but like, epic soap opera going over, hundreds of years.
And these soul groups don't always have to appear in a sequential timeline as well. They can hop backwards and forwards, which is another thing that I've read, and I think other people have read the same thing. Avogadis, you have a question? Then Krista?
Yeah, just a comment and back up what 33-year-old was saying about having memories of when I was really young, because I think I had memories of when I was like 2 or 3 years old, but those were retrieved from when I did like a kind of like a meditation or a guided hypnosis session, like a past life regression, and I did sort of like the flotation tank sensory deprivation. I was able to like get some really early memories. So yeah, but in terms of like remembering previous lives, I can't remember anything, but I did do like an actual past life regression session with those practitioners, and that was my best evidence of past lives, is just like experiencing that past life that I've had. And it's kind of like a memory, but it's kind of like a dream. It's kind of vague, but the emotion was there, and that's what tells me, that's what's real to me, is the emotion I felt from those people in those lives. So it's really interesting.
To help our research and understanding, leave Perceptions Today's podcast reviews, subscribe to the podcast, along with the other social media accounts, and share. Come and join our live events. That way we can get together and have thoughtful discussions along with advancing our understanding of concepts as we go along.